Abadir, Professor of Financial Econometrics, and my affiliations are the American University in Cairo and Imperial College London.
Why did you choose economics as a career?
It's exciting. There are a lot of unanswered questions, and I started studying business and then I switched into economics because I felt it was more rigorous as a student, and I was also interested by mathematical subjects, and I saw potential use for them in economics, which at the time I didn't see in business. But then gradually I did full circle, and I went back into business school and empirical.
Do you think that business administration and business in general should have more of economic thought in it?
Definitely, yes. If you want the bigger picture, you have to think also of the business, of the economic side of things. Yes, we see it in the way recessions hit all the businesses and pretty much dominate our lives these days, talk of recession recovery and so on.
How did you jump from, okay, I'm going to take business, then I'm going to take economics, and how was the step towards, okay, I'm going to take a PEJ in economics?
It was a random walk. Initially, I didn't even know that I'd become an academic. I was just excited by studying, and I wanted to study more. And I studied business because the intention was to work in a business out in the real world. And then gradually I became more interested in the theoretical side of things, and I turned into my studies into more and more mathematical things. Eventually, in New York, I was a professor half-time between economics department and mathematics department, so that was the most mathematical part of my career, and then I reverted back to more business. So.
Do you have any paper that you particularly enjoyed researching and doing?
It's difficult because for me, research and discovery is the most exciting part of my job. And the way I discovered things was totally unpredictable and was very different depending on which subject I was working on. So in the early days when I was working on more specific limited theory developments, it was a very different type of research approach than what I'm doing today. It was more of searching in the dark for lots of different directions in which a formula could be resolved or a question could be resolved. Whereas now it's more of a question of checking the data more thoroughly. So it changes, and the way the research happens. The first one, for example, is a very risky strategy because you can spend a year or more and not get anywhere. Whereas with the second one, there is some incremental progress that happens bit by bit.
Do you have any advice for someone who is starting to do research and is stumbling upon questions and trying to answer them?
Yes. The field of both economics and finance has grown so much now, it's really hard to have a general overview of the field when you're starting. And it's, I think, the optimal strategy to focus on specifics and try to address these and then branch out. And in a sense, this is what inadvertently I did. So initially I couldn't do applied work straight on. I find it much harder than theory, actually, until I got a grasp of everything around me. Not complete grasp, but sufficient to start working on these big questions, big empirical questions.
So, what kind of work have you been developing recently? What are your future goals at research?
There's one big part of me that is working on this phenomenal book. It's the second volume in the series of econometric exercises, which is statistical theory mostly. And it's more than 800 pages long. And it summarizes very much the way I like to approach the subject. And this is the sort of thing that has taken a lot of my time and recently trying to finish it up. Then there's also the old work on theory, statistical theory and so on that is continuing, but in a smaller volume than before. And empirical macro and empirical finance are now taking a big part of my time. And the big questions are actually, we've seen them, the prices, the financial markets, all these interesting questions that motivate a lot of thinking and trying to find solutions to these problems so that they don't happen again.
Do you think it is possible to find solutions or to understand what happened fully? Or will we, as for example with the Great Depression, we get consistently closer to an answer, but it's still very far, so we have an explanation by Friedman, we have an explanation by Bernanke, we have an explanation by someone else. Do you think we will ever get a complete picture of How was it like in those days?
We're getting closer, and like in any subject that attempts to be scientific, we have to build. We shouldn't expect one method to answer everything, but a method will give you an insight into a part of a problem that you didn't see before, that you didn't understand how it functioned before. I'm going to do some publicity for myself now in that in 2007 there was my inaugural lecture at Imperial, and I said there would be a crisis coming, and this is why, and this is what we need to do, and the timing is the following. And I gave a window of 6 months to a year, and that was correct. And it's based on research that I published with Gabriel Talma. Both of us were at the University of York just before that and wrote a series of papers and still continuing with that. And the idea is that it takes the general equilibrium approach that I was talking about, and it takes heterogeneity of firms into account, and it produces very different predictions from the standard representative agent model.
How was the reaction from the people when you were giving that inaugural, after the inaugural list, of course, but before the crisis?
I got invited to the Bank of England to give the same talk by somebody in the audience before the subprime crisis, and I gave my thoughts at the time. And subsequently, for the subsequent 10 years, I've been making our thoughts public, so they can be checked, that they're made in real time. And this model that we derived is very different from the existing models in terms of non-linearities, persistence, and so on. Explains a lot of the things we see. It will not explain everything. No model will explain everything, but it explains a lot of realistic features that we see. And the test of this is it predicting or not? And it's predicting not just events, but it's predicting when these events happen within a certain window.